stay in the Word. I mean, I call them my F words. One day someone said, "How did you do it?" And I'm like, my F words: faith, family, friends. And sometimes some of those 4-letter F words. But I say stay grounded in your faith, look for God, stay with your family. For me, everybody grieves differently and has different things, but don't go. It was important for me to be around people and not isolate myself.
Do you believe God is there in the midst of your suffering? Do you believe that He cares when your world has fallen completely apart? Well, He does care. I've seen it happen time and time again. Welcome to the Significant Women Podcast. I'm your host, Carol McLeod, and I'm joined today by an incredible woman. Her name is Becky Powell, and she's the author of the book, Awful, Beautiful Life. The subtitle of Becky's book is When God Shows Up in the Midst of Tragedy. I know that her story of grace, faith, and triumph will strengthen your faith no matter what you're going through today. And hey, if you know somebody who's going through a really hard time, you might want to share this podcast with them. Lean in and listen to my conversation with Becky Powell. Well, Becky, you're in an interesting season of life, like I am, and we don't have strong-willed 2-year-olds anymore. But our kids are young adults. Like, help us out. Give us some tips. How are you doing in these young adult years?
Well, I laugh. I joke with my children all the time and telling them that I'm giving them lots of great parenting because they're going to see what not to do. But for me, it's the open communication and the unconditional love. I mean, my kids know that I'm always here for them and that I love them unconditionally. And we just talk. I mean, we keep the open communication. And that really, I think, has helped us just stay close together. And this year for Christmas, we're all doing the same devotional together, David Jeremiah. And so, just having little conversations.
Yeah, I love that. I've done YouVersion devotionals before with my daughters, just doing this and talking about it. But so tell us about your kids, how old they are and where are they? Are they close to you?
They are. Madison and her husband Mauricio live half a mile from me, which is great and will be much better once they have children.
Right?
Please. And then my son Boone is also here in Austin, and he is working in hospital administration. And then my youngest, my baby John Luke, is still at Baylor University. He's a senior at Baylor University.
Oh, that's so great. That's so great. I'm glad they're around you because you're in Austin, Texas.
Yes.
You are a Texas girl.
Yes.
But Becky, now I want to get to the heart of your story, which is such a challenging story. Mm-hmm. And I know your story is God's story, and I know you've seen the faithfulness of the Lord. But tell us what you've been through. Tell us your story.
Well, on May 16th, 2013, I got a phone call from my husband, Mark, telling me he had done something wrong and that he loved the children and I, and he left a folder for me in the closet and to follow the instructions exactly. So within about probably 2 hours, I found out that Mark had committed suicide and had left us $21.5 million in debt that I didn't know about. This began a investigation with the Department of Justice, the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, and the FBI. I ended up with 10 attorneys, and it was a crazy, crazy time. It's like you see in the movie. I mean, we had 25 agents come through our house take computers and files and search every inch of our house.
So you're grieving because your husband died. You're dealing with grieving children, grieving parents. And then you've got this financial mess you're in the middle of. Like,
Yes.
How did you even breathe, Becky?
Well, again, it was all God. He showed up, immediately and was there. And I was surrounded by family and friends who just loved and supported us. We owed 90 people money, and most of them were our friends. But yeah, God showed up. He was there, clear and evident. He showed up, and I talk about this in my book in Rainbows. I think my favorite way that he showed up and just carried me, I call it my decoupage Jesus story. We were going through, after the FBI had once they had searched the house, we were allowed to start going through stuff, and we needed to move out of our house. So I'm going through all of our old childhood boxes, and I come across Mark's childhood box, and I find his little decoupage Jesus that he did and saved. And I'm going to put it up here so you can see it. It is, the piece of wood that you do when you're little in Sunday school. And his is just the peaceful, serene Jesus that, we all want to meet when we get to heaven. And then I'm going through my childhood boxes just a little bit later, and I find mine. The fact that we both did one, but the fact that we both saved it in our childhood, well, mine, Jesus in the temple turning over the money changers. Who picks angry Jesus? But it was that moment where God said, not only am I here, but I prepared you for this when you were a little girl. And so this got posted up on my mirror in my house and was my daily reminder that God was in it, and he was there, and everything was going to be okay.
So how long had you and Mark known each other?
We had been married almost 23 years and had known each other 3 years before that, 2.5 years before that.
So you were like college sweethearts, or?
Mark was older, so I was still in college when we met, and he was 7 years older, so he was already out of school.
But you've been married 23 years.
Mm-hmm.
And how old were your children when this happened?
They were 12, 18, and 20.
Okay. Wow. Such impressionable, important years in life. So, Becky, one thing I was thinking about this. So when a loved one dies unexpectedly, you celebrate them at a memorial service, at a funeral. How did you do that? How did you celebrate Mark's life?
Well, it's really interesting because he said in the folder that he left, he had written his obituary. He had gone to the funeral home. He kind of had taken care of everything, but he said he did not want a public service. But I couldn't do that for my kids. He was, yes, he did something terrible, but he was a good man and loved God. And my kids needed to see the support of the community, and we needed to honor their father and my husband. We had a service, there were probably about 1,200 people there, but we openly talked about suicide there. Suicide and the shame that is associated with it is something that from the get-go, I wanted the children not to feel shame about. That, there was nothing they could do. They should not be ashamed of this. And so again, it's that openly talking about it. And, you're going to have to, don't pretend like it didn't happen, and you don't have to hide from that fact. You don't have to talk about it, but you can't pretend like it never happened.
Right. So when I read your book, Becky, An Awful Beautiful Life, which of course I have right here, I don't read many memoirs, but a friend told me to read this memoir, and I couldn't put it down. I was up till 2 or 3 in the morning a couple nights. But one of the things that struck me, Becky, is the lifestyle that you lived pre-Mark's death. Like, he had given you a pretty extravagant lifestyle. Tell us about some of the amazing things that you and Mark and the kids got to do together.
Well, I mean, we lived in an 8,000 square foot house, and we were at every charity event in town, and lots of travel, Europe and all over the United States. It was a very lavish lifestyle.
It was. And Christmas parties with important people there. And
yes, we were very politically connected and connected in the Austin community. And we had a Christmas party. I say in the book, Christmas is my favorite time of year, and that Martha Stewart has nothing on me at Christmas, but we had 7 Christmas trees and 450 people at our Christmas party every year.
Wow. But so Mark must have been a driven person.
Yes.
To want to provide this for you and for him. But he did it the wrong way.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, Becky, how did you breathe again? How did you live again? How did you parent again? How did you keep moving on?
Well, I mean, Madison and Boone were this happened in May. So we had the summer together, and then Boone was going to be a freshman in college and Madison was going to be a junior in college. And thank heavens they were at the same school together. And that was just very peaceful knowing that they were there together. And just an hour and a half down the road too, they were in Waco. I tried to, again, I use this example in the book, to keep parenting the way that we had parenting. You cannot use grief as an excuse for poor behavior. And there's an instance days after Mark died, that John Luke lashed out at one of our family friends who's like a little brother to him. He's a cousin. They're our very dear, close family friends. And I told John Luke he couldn't do that and sent him to his room. And someone said to me, "You can't do that. He's grieving." And I was like, I understand he's grieving, but he cannot use that as an excuse for bad behavior. And I really have told the kids all along, don't ever use this as an excuse to not do what you need to be doing. And I'm really proud of them. They had some really hard stuff that they had to work through. But I think even in those hard circumstances, you've got to be careful to keep them on the same track you wanted them on before.
Yeah, and that's a tricky call as a mom, because you were grieving as well, right, and probably had a lot of compassion toward your children at that moment. Right. So to make that call was probably a complicated moment. How did your so John Luke was in like the throes of adolescence. You said he was 12 years old.
12 years old.
And he needed a dad.
Right. But we had huge support. Both grandfathers, uncles, men in the community that surrounded him, and the kids, all of them. I mean, we were very surrounded. Mm. Another incident that happened like a couple of days afterwards, and I talk about this in the book too. I went up to the room to talk to the kids, and there was a bottle of tequila up there it was not just my children, it was a ton of family friends. And this was one of my moments where they had learned how not to parent. I mean, I lost it. I absolutely lost it. And I grabbed the bottle and I just went down in the laundry room, and it was a plastic bottle, and just threw that. And then I just kind of calmed down, and I went back to the kids and I said, okay, we are not going to use alcohol as a coping mechanism. And I stopped drinking that day until we got through everything, because I wanted them to see me turning to God, not to alcohol. And I think that was another, and again, a lot of times I'm like, oh, I made some pretty good decisions during all of this. And then I realized, oh, I've been praying for wisdom and discernment from God. And it was all him being faithful and answering prayers.
So when did you meet the Lord? Was your faith, was it a long runway before this happened, Becky?
I've been going to church since I was a little girl. And my grandmother, when I would get home from school, she would sit on the lap and read me the little, oh my gosh, I made her read the story of Moses in the basket over and over and over. So it's always been part of my life. But when I was 16, I went to Young Life Camp, Frontier Ranch in Colorado. And that's where I made my personal decision to accept Christ and walk with Christ. And yes, it has not been perfect, and closer and at sometimes more than others, more once I got married and started having children. But yes, I was brought up in the church. My children were brought up in the church.
So you had a runway of faith to fortify you during
Yes.
this moment.
Yes.
So Mark took his own life. You quickly realized your indebtedness. How did that impact your relationship with Christ?
Well, it makes you really realize what's important and that money is not important. We're told that over and over in the Bible. And I wanted that to be something my children knew, that it's way more important to be a good person and to do the right thing than to have a big checking account. So you concentrate on those things where God is saying, money, for the love of money, it just pushed me more towards God and just brought back. We had a difficult point in our marriage years ago, and that passage in 2 Corinthians where it says, take all your thoughts captive to the obedience of Christ. That just led me and guided me. And so turning to him.
So you said the FBI and other governmental agencies got involved in the money that was owed. What happened to you in that? Were you held accountable for Mark's indebtedness?
So it's very complicated. We sold the house, which in Texas cannot be touched by creditors. And we had a lot of life insurance money, which we had from, before we were married. When we got married, we always had a lot of life insurance money. And that also is not subject to the claims of creditors. But for me to move forward, I had to pay everybody back. I needed to know that our life was our life, that I bought my own shoes, that we paid for every trip, that every charitable donation we made, that we had actually done. I didn't want to think that as I'm walking around town that friend paid for this trip or that friend paid for those shoes. So it was important to me to pay it back. So we took all of the money, the life insurance money, the money from the house to pay the creditors back. But during the SEC was involved because my husband was in a private investment banking firm. And so they immediately got involved. And then the FBI and SEC, and they really allowed us to take the time to collect the insurance money, pay the creditors back. The SEC said they've never seen, not the SEC, I'm sorry, the Department of Justice said they've never seen creditors get paid back 100% of their principal. Typically it's 10 cents on the dollar. So because they knew, because of all the government agencies, and I haven't even mentioned the IRS, which that's a whole other story, but because they were all patient and waited for the process because they knew they were going to try to pay, that we were going to try and pay everybody back. They were really very gracious. I did end up having to, as I said, hire 10 attorneys, 2 criminal attorneys, because initially they were like, did she know? Was she involved? So we had to kind of work through all of that. And I had no idea. It was very clear and evident from when they found all the paper that went along with it. The FBI never actually even interviewed me because it was so clear that I didn't know. So It was a lot, but again, God was there. He was faithful. He walked the entire way with all of us.
Mm-hmm. So your first instinct was to pay everybody off.
Immediately,
as quickly as you could. So did you have money to live on? Like, how did you feed your kids?
So we immediately, the attorney said, go withdraw some money from your account. So we did. I went and withdrew some cash, but because we thought everything was going to be frozen. But my parents and my husband's parents picked in, and they started, paying the mortgage and making sure we had enough money. Really, they paid the attorney's retainers fees and all of that until we finally, at one point, Mark had another life insurance policy through his work, and my attorneys gathered all the creditors and said, she wants to pay you back. She wants to pay you back everything, but she needs money to live on. So we just want to make sure that you're okay with her keeping this insurance policy to, live on for the kids. So that's what we use to pay the attorney's fees and live on. And
wow. So I just picture you, Becky, at that point in your life with so many arrows coming at you. And they were coming toward your heart. They were coming toward what you treasured the most. How did you live? Did you read your Bible? Like, did you get up the next morning and open the Word?
Every day. I spent so much time in the Psalms. I mean, the Psalms were just life-giving for me. And then I would get up every morning. I would read. The neighbor that lived behind us, they're really good friends. He would come in every morning, pick up the paper. Well, actually, we ended up canceling the paper because we were on the front page. And then we would have our morning coffee. So I would do that. And then every day, I showered and put my makeup on. And sometimes I cried my makeup off halfway through, but it was just one of those things that I was like, okay, I'm going to get up. I'm going to spend time in the Word. I'm going to shower, put my makeup on, and just have this routine, not drink. And it was helpful. It was helpful just to kind of, okay, this is what my day is going to start like. Who knows how it's going to end.
Did you keep going to church?
Yes. Oh my gosh. In fact, the first Sunday, he died on a Thursday, late Thursday. And we didn't go that Sunday, but the very next Sunday we went to church. And I will never forget the sermon. It was like God was speaking just to us. It was about a race and how there's like a 3 mile or 3 lap race, I don't know, and how everybody's really strong in the beginning and you're just invigorated. And then at the end, you can see the goal, but in that lap 2, you're fatigued, and a lot of people just get off the track. And the whole sermon was like, stay on the track, get through that 2nd mile. And so I was in that 2nd mile for a really long time, but I just played that back in my head too. Just don't give up.
We'll get back to Becky's story in just a minute, but I wanted to offer you a resource today that might help you or someone you know and love get through a really difficult time in life. We did extensive research at mostly secular websites on secular platforms to discover what the issues are, what the top issues are that women grapple with today. You'll be so interested to know that nearly every website, secular or Christian, agreed on the big 4 things that really have the tendency to grab a woman by the throat. The 4 things are identity, purpose, stress, and loneliness. And so what I did is I wrote a biblical response to each of those 4 challenges. The result is my book, Significant: Becoming a Woman of Unmatched Purpose and Irrepressible Hope. I I hope that you will take the time to buy a copy of my book. And while you're at it, why not buy two and give one to a friend? If you or one of your friends is facing one of those issues, consider ordering Significant as a gift. You can get it from our website, which is carolmcleodministries.com, or wherever you get your favorite books online. Now, let's get back to my conversation with Becky Powell. You know, one of my questions for you is this, Becky. I've been thinking about it. What did you do when well-intended people said the wrong thing to you? What did you do in those moments?
You know, you just have to understand, first of all, they can never understand what you're going through. And you just got to know their heart. I mean, they really don't. I mean, I had a girlfriend who was complaining because of her attorney's fees for her divorce that she chose. And I'm like, okay, I'm spending like $20,000 a month on attorney's fees of money that I don't even have, not because of my own self. No, I mean, people say stuff like, well, he's in a better place, and he is. I mean, but the kids sometimes couldn't handle some of those things. And I'm like, you've got to know their heart. Their intentions are pure. So that kind of stuff just, it really didn't bother me. I mean, you can tell, I always said, you could tell when someone really cared about the kids and I, or whether they just wanted the inside scoop. And people that would always say, hey, how are the kids? How are they doing? How are you? What can I do? I mean, those are the people that you knew were there. It's the people that are like, wow, why was he doing that? And what happened? And you're just like, you know, they just wanted scoop. And you just keep them in an arm's distance, but love them anyway.
Okay, so this next question, Becky, is a tender question. But I try to think the way my listeners think. And you said that your daughter, Madison, is married. How was her wedding day for you?
So hard. So hard. It was the first, like one of the very first things that she said, who's going to walk me down the aisle? I mean, that very day, within hours after finding out. So it was hard because he wasn't there. It was also really hard because her husband, Mauricio's father, had just passed away from COVID like months before. So here are these two kids getting married without their fathers and thinking, oh my gosh, our grandchildren aren't going to know their grandfathers. But we took, for her something blue, she took one of Mark's, my husband's ties, and one of Mauricio's dad's ties, and sewed hearts on the inside of her dress to represent both of them being there. And then both her brothers, Boone and Jean-Luc, walked her down the aisle. And it was just the sweetest thing.
Oh, that was perfect. Mm-hmm. And you walked her down the aisle. That was perfect.
And then the other thing that was so sweet was during the father-daughter dance. Mm-hmm. The grandfather, well, actually, one of my oldest son started, and then the grandfather that was living came in, and then 8 of Mark's friends came and cut in one after another, and then my youngest son ended it. And he just started sobbing. He just held her, and he was just crying. I mean, it was just so sweet.
Okay, you're making me cry.
I know, it was the sweetest thing. I know. I watched that video over and over. It's just precious.
Oh, it is. It is. Mm-hmm. But what a representation of the support in her life. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Such a beautiful picture. Yeah. So, Becky, has there been a Bible verse that's really been precious and strengthening to you as you've been through this storm?
You know, I mean, all of Psalm 34. I mean, it's just, I mean, let me tell you, here, I have it highlighted. It's like, I will bless the Lord at all times. And it talks in here, I sought the Lord and he answered and delivered me from all my fears. For those who fear him, there is no want. I mean, you can go, it answered everything. We're surrounded by angels. The angel of the Lord encamps around those who fear the Lord, and he rescues them. So that I almost read that one every day. Then of course the take the thoughts captive to the obedience of Christ. I mean, that was like when my thoughts, when I was like going down the wrong path, and I kept going there. I kept going there and trying to have something. Okay, we'll go into prayer or think about this or think about something else. So I think for me, those are the two things, that the two Bible verses that kept me strong.
So you're grieving and you have to forgive this man that you loved so deeply. So how do you grieve and forgive at the same time? Was that a challenge?
I get asked this a lot. I mean, for me, he was suffering. And I think I've just always felt compassion. I'm sad that he was going through what he was doing. And again, it goes back to, he really was a good man. He was a good father. He did a terrible, terrible thing. So I don't know. I mean, there were times where it was frustrating, but I just never felt this anger at him. So I think the forgiveness was easy. And like I said, it probably was harder for me to think about how this would affect the kids in the long run. But
as a mom, that's totally understandable.
Right.
I know you love music.
Country music.
Yeah, you do. But is there a song that just really strengthened you?
Me and God, Josh Turner, Me and God. Oh my gosh, that's such a great song. Let's see what else. Toby Keith, When You're Going Through Hell, Keep On Going, Don't Slow Down. I mean, in the book, every chapter title is either a verse or a song title. Jesus, Take the Wheel. I mean, that's one of the things I love about country music, is so many of them turn to God. Brad Paisley's This Is Country Music, and it talks about how we're not supposed to use the word cancer in a song, and we're not supposed to talk about Jesus because it can rub people wrong. But I'm like, that is what got me through, and I do talk about it, and I frequently say that. I mean, the country music, I would get in my bathtub, I would put my country music on, it would make me laugh, it would make me cry.
Yeah. You're a music girl, I can assure everyone.
I know.
This girl loves some music. So how are the first holidays for the family?
Oh, so hard. I couldn't even. All those firsts are really hard. Like the first time I went to the grocery store, this is not holidays, I'll get back to that. But Mark used to make what they called Dad's spaghetti. And he would go and he would buy 3 different types of pasta and mix to make this pasta. So the first time I went to the grocery store in the pasta aisle, I started crying and sobbing and had to leave the grocery store. But Christmas was really hard. It's my favorite time of year. It has been since I was a little girl. And I couldn't even hang mine and Mark's Christmas stockings. I hung the kids, but I couldn't hang hers. And then I had this realization. I'm like, oh my gosh, he gets to spend Christmas in heaven with Jesus. And so I was like, oh, that's so not fair. Can you imagine?
Yeah. Talk about an extravagant celebratory Christmas.
Right. So I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So for Christmas, actually, a group of my really close friends came over right before Christmas, and everybody was leaving, and they brought a bench and they had all these bows tied on it for us to put out at the cemetery so we could go out there and sit out the cemetery. It was super sweet.
Now, that was one of my questions for you, Becky. What is the kindest thing that people can do for someone who's grieving?
I mean, show up. I mean, people just showed up. They were there. I mean, 2 women gave me hankies that I still carry with me at all times. I mean, people showed up with tissues and water and toilet paper. But I mean, you just show up. You're there, whether you just sit or just being there.
Yeah. You don't have to have the right thing to say. Just
no.
Yeah. So how are you doing today, Becky? What does your life look like today?
Well, I cannot wait to get my baby out of college. I will feel like, okay, check, done that. Everybody's kind of grown and on their own. So I think until I get there, it's going to be, I don't know. I mean, I've got a job and I love it and I have friends and I'm busy. And like I said, God has been faithful. It's been faithful. So I've been doing a lot of talking and just showing how God can really work in your life if you let him and look for him too.
Yeah. So what is your advice to a woman who's really grieving today? It might not be the loss of a husband. It might be a prodigal. It might be a health diagnosis. What is your word of hope to that woman today?
I mean, stay in the word. I mean, I call them my F words. One day someone said, "How did you do it?" And I'm like, my F words: faith, family, friends. And sometimes some of those 4-letter F words. But I say stay grounded in your faith, look for God, stay with your family. For me, everybody grieves differently and has different things, but don't go. It was important for me to be around people and not isolate myself. I think a lot of times when you isolate and sit in it, I think it's hard. And I also say, look forward. You can't change what's happened. So don't sit and dwell in, should I have done this? Could I have known that? There's no going back. That's another great song, Chris Stapleton, Broken Halos. Don't go looking for the answers. Don't go looking for the reasons why. We're not meant to know. They belong to Jesus in the by and by. So I say move forward, stay in the word, find your friends. Mm-hmm. And it's okay to be sad. And it's okay to sit and be still too.
You know, I've heard you say so many healthy things today, how you said you were not going to use alcohol as a coping mechanism, that you got up every day and you showered and you put your makeup on, knowing you're going to cry your makeup off, but you still did those simple things. You listened to music, you opened the word, you continued to parent well, you didn't withdraw from your children. I've heard you say so many healthy, powerful things today. Becky, thank you for being vulnerable and sharing your story. It's an amazing story, and the listeners can read about it in your book, An Awful, Beautiful Life. You know, Becky, the name of my podcast is Significant Women. And so I don't want to go without asking you a question that I ask everybody. Who have been the significant women in your life? It could be a Bible character. It could be your second grade Sunday school teacher. It could be a celebrity. But who are the women who have truly impacted the life of Becky?
My grandmother, first and foremost. I mean, I think she's the one, like I said, just sitting on the sofa and her reading that story about Moses. I think she instilled in me the love for God. My mother, who just is the epitome of unconditional love. My sister, I mean, we talk every day. I mean, I couldn't have gotten through all of this without her. And I mean, there are so many. I mean, my girlfriends, I have an amazing group of godly women. And then, oh my gosh, Phyllis Ann Rose, who was our pastor's wife, who really walked me through a very, very hard time in life. I've been very blessed with amazing women in my life.
I love it. I love it. Thank you for sharing that with us. And now, before we go, would you pray for the listeners?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Lord, I pray for all the women listening that they will see and feel you and know that you show up in the midst of tragedy. Lord, thank you for Carol and her ministry, and bless all the women listening. I pray in Jesus' name.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much, Becky. Well, if you've been encouraged by today's episode, would you reach out and let us know? You can find us online at carolmcleodministries.com or on any of our social media channels. As always, don't forget to download our app for your smartphone to get access to all of the best of our resources. If you're interested in ordering a copy of Becky's book, Awful Beautiful Life, you can find it on Amazon or again, wherever great books are sold. Before we end this episode, I want to offer some hope to those of you who find yourselves brokenhearted or crushed, much like Becky did. Did you know that God's word tells us that He is close to the brokenhearted? That's from Psalm chapter 34, verse 18. It actually says a little bit more than that. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted, and He saves those who are crushed in spirit. Sweet friend, I want you to know, I want you to cling to this scripture today and know that no matter what you're going through, God is close to you. You are not alone. He has not left you to fend for yourself, but He's wrapping His loving arms of strength and joy around you today. He's not forsaken you. He has a purpose for your season of pain. Remember, my friend, you're significant because you've been made in the image of your Creator, and He's calling you to make an eternal difference at your moment in history. I'll see you next time on the Significant Women Podcast.